Nobody in the WNBA, not the rookies, not the legends, not even the executives, was prepared for this level of disruption. Because the moment Caitlin Clark stepped into the league, everything shifted. Ratings spiked, ticket prices doubled, merch sold out, and suddenly, two of the biggest platforms in American sports, NBC and Peacock, made a move so bold, so unexpected, so industry-shaking that WNBA veterans are reportedly stunned, confused, and in some cases, furious. Because insiders say NBC and Peacock aren't just interested in Caitlin Clark, they're building around her. And that is what changed everything. According to multiple leaks, NBC executives held emergency meetings after Clark's last nationally televised game broke streaming records. And they allegedly said, "She's not a player, she's a network asset." That line alone shook the entire sports world. Because if it's true, it means networks are shifting their loyalties away from longtime WNBA veterans and toward one superstar who just arrived. And the reaction behind the scenes? Pure tension. Players who've spent 10, 12, even 15 years building this league reportedly feel blindsided, replaced, overshadowed by a rookie whose influence is bigger than the entire organization expected. And the craziest part? Insiders claim NBC and Peacock are preparing to restructure their WNBA coverage entirely, including commentators, scheduling, camera crews, and primetime slotting, all centered around Caitlin Clark's presence. One exec allegedly said, "If we don't move fast, someone else will." But what does that mean for the veterans? What does that mean for the league's balance? And why are insiders saying NBC already made a decision that could permanently shift power away from long-standing players? Before the chaos, before the network meetings, before the shocked reactions from WNBA veterans, there was a quiet truth circulating through sports media. A truth whispered in boardrooms, debated behind broadcast desks, and hinted at by analysts who sensed a storm coming. The women's basketball landscape was about to experience the biggest power shift in its history. And at the center of that shift stood one player, Caitlin Clark. Her entrance into the league didn't feel like a rookie debut. It felt like a cultural event, a global signal that the WNBA was stepping into a new era whether the veterans were ready or not. But what people didn't know, what only insiders whispered about privately, was that major networks had been watching her long before she ever stepped foot onto a WNBA court. NBC Peacock, executives, advertising teams, live sports strategists, billions of dollars in corporate vision and forecasting. They weren't just impressed by Caitlin Clark, they were preparing for her. Years of declining sports ratings, the collapse of traditional cable, and the explosion of streaming had every network scrambling for the next major draw. And suddenly, this young phenom at Iowa was pulling in audience numbers that rivaled NFL broadcasts. NBC took note. Peacock took note. Sponsors took note. But the most surprising part? WNBA players, especially the veterans, didn't realize just how closely the networks were watching. When Caitlin entered the league, she didn't bring fans. She brought an ecosystem. She brought the college audience. She brought corporate interest. She brought Midwest markets that had never cared about the WNBA. She brought men who had never watched women's basketball. She brought older viewers who saw the Larry Bird energy. She brought younger viewers who saw the Steph Curry shooting range. She brought everybody. And that's when NBC and Peacock made the decision that would change everything. They weren't going to support Caitlin's rise. They were going to center their coverage around it. This became clear the moment internal scheduling documents leaked, showing that NBC was pushing aggressively for primetime coverage of every game Caitlin played, even if it meant sidelining teams with longer histories or veterans with bigger resumes. That leak hit the league like a thunderbolt. Veterans who spent years fighting for TV time suddenly saw decisions shifting overnight. NBC wasn't looking at championships, seasons played, or legacy. They were looking at numbers. Cold, unforgiving digital numbers, ratings, engagement spikes, merch sales, search trends, streaming conversions, sponsorship interest. And Caitlin Clark was outpacing everybody by margins the WNBA had never seen. To the networks, this wasn't favoritism, this was survival. But to WNBA veterans, it felt like betrayal. Players who fought through the darkest years of the league, who endured low pay, empty arenas, ignored accomplishments, and limited media coverage, now watched a rookie walk in and instantly receive prime-time slots, exclusive interviews, highlight packages, full-game replays, branded segments, national media tours, partnership discussions, a star treatment that some veterans waited their entire careers for. The jealousy didn't come from hate. It came from exhaustion. They had been the backbone of the league. They had advocated for growth. They had pushed through disrespect and corruption. They had carried the banner before anyone noticed it. But Caitlin didn't have to wait, because NBC and Peacock understood something that the league itself hadn't fully realized. Caitlin Clark wasn't just a star. She was a shift in consumer behavior. Executives reportedly said in a private meeting, "She's the first women's basketball player who moves markets in real time." That sentence shook the entire sports media world. Then came the real turning point. NBC's analytics team presented a bombshell report showing Caitlin Clark's games had 300% higher engagement. Her highlights outperformed all other WNBA players combined. Peacock subscriptions spiked whenever she played. Advertisers specifically requested her slots. Her games attracted new demographics never seen in women's sports. It was the kind of data a network dreams about, and it changed everything. From that moment on, NBC and Peacock weren't just reacting to Caitlin's popularity, they were strategizing around it. Entire departments were restructured, graphics teams were reassigned. Commentators were told to prepare Caitlin-centered segments. Production teams shifted focus. Cameras were reassigned to follow her warm-ups, reactions, celebrations, frustrations, everything. But the veterans? They saw all of this happening in real time, and they were stunned. Some were hurt, some were confused, some were proud but worried. Some were frustrated but remained silent. Some were angry, very angry, but careful not to speak publicly. Because what could they say? They knew the truth. Caitlin Clark brought a level of attention that none of them, no matter how talented, could have generated on their own. She wasn't just a star. She was a phenomenon, the type that comes once in a generation. But that didn't make the emotional sting any easier. One veteran was overheard telling a teammate, "We built this league, and now they're building it around her." That line spread like wildfire, because it captured exactly what many felt. Pride mixed with pain, excitement mixed with fear, celebration mixed with resentment. And that resentment, that quiet frustration, that underlying tension, it was about to explode. Because NBC and Peacock weren't just shifting coverage. They were preparing to make a move so bold, so unprecedented, so blatantly centered on Caitlin Clark, that it would shake the WNBA's power structure to its core. The shift didn't happen quietly. It happened violently, ripping through the league like an earthquake nobody saw coming until the floor underneath them split open. NBC and Peacock made their decision, and the veterans felt it instantly, long before the public ever sensed a hint of controversy. Because all it took was one leaked memo, one internal document, to ignite a storm that the WNBA has not recovered from. According to insiders, NBC finalized a restructuring plan titled National Coverage Realignment, Priority Athlete Integration. That athlete, everyone knew exactly who it meant. The memo revealed that NBC intended to increase Caitlin-focused broadcast windows by 280%, shifting primetime coverage toward her games, reducing coverage for long-standing veteran-led teams, and even redirecting production crews to follow her storylines more aggressively. Veterans didn't just read this memo, they felt it. Suddenly, they weren't the centerpieces anymore. They were background characters in a league they built with their sweat, their injuries, their championships, and their sacrifices. For the first time, players who spent years grinding for respect found themselves overshadowed by someone who had been in the league for minutes. The tension began behind closed doors. At practice, in group chats, in whispers on buses, in quiet locker room side conversations. One veteran reportedly said, "We finally get our spotlight," and they hand it to someone who just walked in. Another added, "She's good, she's great, but damn, did the rest of us vanish?" Yet the frustration was deeper than jealousy. It was survival. Because players weren't just worried about spotlight. They were worried about contracts, endorsements, airtime incentives, and future bargaining power. If one athlete controlled the entire media ecosystem, what happened to everyone else? Meanwhile, NBC wasn't slowing down. Executives held a closed-door meeting with Peacock representatives and laid out a plan to make Caitlin the centerpiece of women's basketball streaming. The plan included exclusive docu-style content, behind-the-scenes warm-up footage, mic'd-up segments, Caitlin-only highlight packages, a dedicated Clark camera feed, faster distribution of her viral clips, priority placement on the Peacock homepage. To NBC, this was strategy. To veterans, it was erasure. The conflict escalated sharply when Peacock finalized a move that blindsided the entire league. They announced a new live analysis series titled Clark Effect: The Future of the Game. And guess what? Not one veteran was consulted. Not one was asked to appear. Not one was included as part of the narrative. The show's trailer leaked early. And it featured Caitlin warming up, fans chanting her name, executives praising her, media analysts describing her as the future. But there was one line, one single line, that detonated the league internally. Women's basketball finally has a superstar worth building around. Veterans saw it as a slap across the face. Some cried, some cursed, some walked out of practice. Some called their agents in panic. Some questioned whether the league even needed them anymore. Reports say one former MVP stormed into a locker room ranting, "So everything we did for the last decade means nothing? We weren't worth building around?" This wasn't resentment toward Caitlin. It was resentment toward the network machine behind her. Because in an instant, NBC and Peacock didn't just elevate her. They redefined the entire value structure of the WNBA. And then came the moment where the drama turned public. During an off-camera break at a televised game, a hot mic unintentionally captured a veteran muttering, "I guess we don't matter if we're not Caitlin Clark." That clip leaked. It went viral. Fans heard it. Commentators replayed it. Blogs dissected it. Suddenly the world realized the WNBA was splitting into two, the Caitlin era and everyone else. The league tried to downplay it. NBC tried to delete it. Peacock refused to comment. But the damage was done. Veterans began demanding explanations from the league. The league blamed the networks. The networks blamed algorithmic data. And fans took sides in a way nobody expected. Then came the first twist. Now, a whistleblower from NBC contacted a sports outlet anonymously and leaked private emails between executives. Emails outlining what might be the most controversial broadcasting strategy the WNBA has ever faced. The emails included phrases like, "Legacy players are not conversion drivers. Minimize airtime for low-engagement athletes. Prioritize narrative building around emerging star Clark. Veteran-focused segments produce diminishing returns." In other words, NBC wasn't just spotlighting Caitlin, they were phasing others out. The leak hit social media like a meteor. Veterans were furious, fans were outraged, analysts were shocked. Commentators called it disrespect at the highest level. And then the twist exploded publicly when one veteran finally broke silence on Twitter. Posting, "We're not props for your ratings. Instant chaos. Millions of views, thousands of comments, and a wave of interviews requesting her side. But what made the situation even wilder? Caitlin herself had no idea this was happening behind the scenes. And insiders say she was blindsided, embarrassed, and stressed as her name became the center of a controversy she never asked for. The rookie who just wanted to play basketball suddenly found herself accused of stealing spotlight, killing veteran careers, and being network favored. People inside her circle say she was shaken after learning about NBC's restructuring, allegedly telling someone close, "I didn't ask for this." But even if she didn't ask for it, the networks were already moving full steam ahead. The train was in motion. The veterans were furious. And the league was losing control over its own narrative. Because NBC had already prepared a second move, a move even more controversial, scheduled to be announced in the coming weeks. A move that would ignite the veterans even more than the memo. A move that would make Peacock the center of the storm. A move so bold that insiders fear some players may even threaten to walk out. And the craziest part? The networks hadn't even told the WNBA yet. The tension was already boiling. Veterans were already furious. The league was scrambling behind the scenes. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared anyone for NBC and Peacock's second move. The one insiders say was so secretive, so audacious, so downright disrespectful to the players who built the WNBA, that a network source described it as the spark that's going to burn the whole relationship down. Because the first move was spotlight. The second move was control. And when it leaked, the entire WNBA nearly imploded. It began when a production assistant accidentally forwarded the wrong version of a confidential document to a freelance editor. That editor, realizing what they were looking at, sent it anonymously to 3 major sports blogs. Within minutes, the leak hit the internet. The document was titled, Content Prioritization Initiative, Phase 2 Implementation. Phase 2, meaning NBC and Peacock's shocking Caitlin-centered plan? That was just the beginning. The leaked document outlined multiple changes that would reshape broadcasts, commentary, and even the storylines the networks would push during games. And the words on that document were like gasoline poured over a forest fire of already simmering resentment. The leak read, commentary teams will be restructured to focus narrative building around Clark's development arc. Non-essential player storylines will be minimized to maintain audience retention. Non-essential. Minimized. WNBA veterans, champions, MVPs, Olympians, reduced to non-essential background characters. Another section said, veteran interviews to be shortened. Clark-adjacent segments prioritized for emotional engagement and social media amplification. Shortened interviews? Reduced airtime? Emotional engagement tailored around a single rookie? It only got worse. One bullet point stated, when scheduling conflicts arise, Clark's games must be slotted into prime visibility windows. Meaning if 2 games clashed, neither the league's top veterans, the faces of franchises, would be bumped out of prime time and into digital-only coverage. Then came the line that detonated the sports world. Shift viewer familiarity away from legacy players and toward Clark-centric media assets. Shift viewer familiarity away from legacy players. The uproar was immediate. Veterans felt erased. Younger players felt invisible. Fans felt insulted. Commentators felt used. One longtime veteran reportedly cried in the locker room after reading the leak, saying, "They want to replace us. They want her to be the league, not us." Another veteran was overheard saying, "This is how they thank us for 20 years of building this league? By pushing us aside for ratings?" The tension was turning into open rebellion. Multiple players began calling a players-only emergency meeting, something that hasn't happened since the WNBA bubble. Their union started requesting clarification from the league. The league started panicking internally. Executives were calling emergency conference lines. PR teams were scrambling. But the networks? They stayed silent, which only made the suspicion grow. Then came the moment everything exploded publicly. A WNBA analyst on national TV accidentally referenced the leaked document live, saying, "It's clear NBC and Peacock want to make Clark the centerpiece, whether the rest of the league likes it or not." The clip went viral within seconds. Veterans took it as confirmation. Fans took it as proof. Critics took it as ammunition. Pundits took it as a sign the WNBA was losing control. But the biggest shock wasn't the leak itself. It was the third-party email that surfaced later that day. An anonymous NBC insider sent it to a journalist. The subject line alone froze the internet. "You haven't seen the real plan yet." The insider explained that Phase 2 wasn't even the most controversial part. Phase 3, not yet leaked, would redefine the role of traditional veterans and shift the attention economy toward media-driven personalities. Media-driven personalities. Meaning Caitlin. Meaning future rookies like her. Meaning veterans who didn't generate numbers would fade out. And then came the reveal that sparked actual fear inside locker rooms. There are discussions about restructuring national broadcast teams to include Clark as a guest analyst during off days or injury periods, odd regardless of her tenure. A rookie who hasn't played a full professional season being offered analyst privileges over Hall of Famers? Veterans were livid. One star reportedly yelled, "So we're not even worth talking anymore unless we're next to Caitlin Clark?" Social media erupted again. People began accusing NBC and Peacock of exploiting Caitlin, sabotaging veterans, hijacking the WNBA, manufacturing a one-player league, undermining the sport's integrity. Then a prominent ex-player tweeted, "Networks never cared about us. They only care about numbers." But the shocking twist came when a reporter revealed that Caitlin herself was unaware of NBC's Phase 2 and was uncomfortable being used as the face in a way that hurt her peers. A source close to Caitlin said, "She feels guilty, as she didn't want this." But whether she wanted it or not, the machine was already in motion. The networks had decided. The veterans were enraged. The league was cornered. And that's when the second twist erupted. Peacock finalized a new broadcast partnership with a major sponsor, one that required Caitlin Clark's involvement in every major promotional campaign for the next 2 seasons. The kicker? Veterans weren't told. The league wasn't warned. Even Caitlin wasn't aware until it leaked. One insider said, "Peacock doesn't care who gets mad. They want numbers." The veterans hit a breaking point. Several players began discussing boycotts. Others began demanding equal media treatment. Some hinted at refusing interviews with NBC altogether. The WNBA found itself facing a potential locker room civil war. And through all this chaos, Caitlin Clark stayed publicly silent. Not because she didn't care, not because she agreed, but because she didn't know how to speak without making things worse. Then late at night, she posted something cryptic. A single sentence on Instagram. "I didn't ask for this." The internet shattered. Fans rushed to interpret it. Veterans retweeted it. Analysts dissected it. NBC panicked privately, because that one sentence proved it all. Caitlin wasn't behind this. NBC and Peacock were manufacturing a narrative she never agreed to. Veterans were angry at the wrong person. The league was drowning in PR fire. And the worst part? The real plan. Phase 3 still hasn't leaked. Insiders warn it contains the biggest shift of all. Something even veterans haven't imagined. Something NBC is terrified to reveal. And it's something that will change the WNBA forever and push Caitlin Clark into the center of a media storm she cannot escape. The moment Phase 2 leaked, the WNBA didn't just catch fire, it detonated. What had been whispered frustration inside locker rooms became a public earthquake felt across every platform, every fan base, every sports newsroom. Social media didn't know where to look first. at the veterans calling out the networks, at fans screaming in comment sections, or at the analysts who suddenly found themselves in the middle of a war between tradition and transformation. Twitter was the first to break. Thousands of posts per second. Hashtag respect the vets trending. Hashtag Clark era trending right next to it. And fans were divided in a way nobody had predicted. Why is the media erasing legends for a rookie? Caitlyn's numbers speak for themselves. Change was coming. The networks are killing the league's unity. They're treating her like the WNBA is a one-woman show. Stop blaming Caitlyn. Blame the corporations. And that last line became the heartbeat of the debate. Because while some fans were furious at the networks, others were targeting Caitlyn directly, accusing her of benefiting from a media machine that was suffocating veterans. Her supporters pushed back. She didn't ask for this. She doesn't control NBC. She's caught in the middle. But resentment is emotional, not logical. And emotions were exploding everywhere. Former players began chiming in. A retired WNBA All-Star tweeted, "Networks ignored us for years, and now they're overcompensating by ignoring everyone but her." Another legend posted, "I love Caitlyn's game, but the disrespect to the women who built this league is unreal." Current players were even bolder, some posting cryptic emojis, others alluding to the leaked memo, and one star writing bluntly, "We're tired of being invisible." Within hours, the league sent out a private directive telling players not to comment publicly. But by then, the temperature was already past boiling. ESPN analysts began hosting emergency panels. One said, "This is not a Caitlyn Clark problem. This is a corporate takeover." Another warned, "If NBC doesn't course correct, they're going to fracture the league." But the shocking part? NBC analysts, the ones on the network's own payroll, looked visibly uncomfortable discussing the leak. One quietly slipped in a comment, "Players deserve equal respect, regardless of network interest." Fans immediately clipped it and pushed it across social media. It went viral in 2 minutes. Meanwhile, industry insiders began leaking more information. NBC had already pitched advertisers on a Clark-led WNBA rebrand. Peacock was preparing a Caitlyn-only mid-season documentary. Executives allegedly viewed veterans as legacy assets with low conversion value. The wording enraged players. Legacy assets? We're human beings. She didn't even play a full season. What is this mess? They're using her to erase us. The frustration wasn't jealousy. It was a fight for identity. These women spent years grinding through disrespect, low pay, and contract battles. They built the WNBA through consistency, advocacy, and sacrifice. Now a network memo was reducing their entire careers to a data chart. Sponsors began calling in privately too. One major sportswear company reportedly demanded clarity from the league. Is this a league, or is this now a Caitlyn Clark media vehicle? Another sponsor warned, "If the players rebel publicly, we may pause WNBA campaigns." The league was now trapped between its veterans, its rising star, and the corporations paying for television time. A nightmare triangle with no safe exit. Meanwhile, Caitlyn, trying to keep her head down, became the unwilling lightning rod for every emotional reaction. Insiders say she was overwhelmed, stressed, nearly in tears after realizing the scale of the backlash. "She didn't know," a friend said. "Makan, she hates this narrative." But what made everything spiral even faster was Peacock's next promotional rollout, which dropped automatically, unaware of the unfolding controversy. It featured Caitlyn front and center. No veterans, no legends, just her. The tagline? "The new era starts now." Veterans lost it. Fans lost it. Analysts lost it. The WNBA's official Instagram was flooded with comments. "Where are the other players? Is this a league or a commercial? You're disrespecting the women who built this. This is how you break a locker room." Even players who had stayed silent began liking comments criticizing NBC and Peacock. A subtle revolt, but a revolt nonetheless. Then came the biggest shock of all. A veteran who almost never speaks publicly about drama posted, "We're tired, and we're done being quiet." The reaction? In hundreds of thousands of likes, tens of thousands of comments. Every blog reposted it with captions like, "Players are fed up," "WNBA civil war incoming." One journalist tweeted, "I've covered the league for 15 years. I've never seen players this openly angry." Another added, "If NBC doesn't fix this, they're going to lose the trust of the entire locker room." Sponsors started distancing themselves quietly, removing planned posts that featured Caitlin exclusively. Not because they didn't support her, but because they didn't want to be accused of enabling a corporate takeover. Then the league made things worse. WNBA released a statement saying, "We welcome increased attention from NBC and Peacock and look forward to the continued growth of our game." Veterans were furious, and this is not addressing the problem. This is corporate speak garbage. Say something about your players being erased. The comment section turned into a battleground. It was in that chaos, with fans rioting online, players raging privately, sponsors panicking, and networks refusing to comment, that a new leak dropped. One that could end everything. An email between two high-ranking NBC executives. Players will adapt. If they don't, they'll be replaced. Replaced. That single word sent shockwaves across every corner of the internet. Instant panic, instant backlash, instant war. And Caitlin? She wasn't prepared for what happened next. The backlash was nuclear. Fans were rioting. Veterans were furious. Sponsors were panicking. Analysts were screaming on live broadcasts. And through all of it, Caitlin stood in the middle of a storm she never created. A storm built by network executives who gambled her name for ratings and nearly destroyed the league in the process. But the real explosion didn't happen until the final leak. The one that forced Caitlin Clark's entire world to stop. Because while the public was busy dissecting leaked memos and athlete reactions, a third document surfaced. A document that revealed the deepest, most controversial, and most dangerous part of NBC's plan. Phase 3. The part they tried hardest to bury. The part no one, not players, not coaches, not even league officials, was supposed to see. The leaked file contained one chilling headline: Long-term restructuring strategy. Audience optimization through star consolidation. Star consolidation. Why, if that meant exactly what it sounded like. NBC was planning to build the entire WNBA around one star and quietly push everyone else out of the spotlight. But what came next was worse. The document described a future broadcasting model in horrifying detail. Legacy athletes will be gradually deprioritized in narrative coverage. Clark-centered features will anchor national broadcasts. Non-engaging players may be phased out of promotional cycles entirely. Phase out. Players. Human beings. Women who spent years sacrificing for this league. To NBC, they were non-engaging. To NBC, they were optional. To NBC, they were replaceable. But the line that sent shockwaves across the sports world, the line that made veterans text each other in panic, made reporters gasp on live streams, I'd made fans scream, was this: if resistance emerges internally, Clark must remain the face of the league regardless of veteran pushback. They were planning to force her into leadership, force her into the center, force her to become the symbol of a corporate takeover she never asked for. The entire league's pressure, the entire fan base, the entire corporate agenda would be sitting on her shoulders. And then came the part that broke her. A private communication between NBC marketing executives read, if conflicts arise, Clark should be encouraged to publicly support the network's direction to maintain unity. In other words, they expected her to turn on the veterans. Publicly, on camera, for their agenda. It wasn't just disrespectful, it was sinister. When this leak hit social media, Caitlyn reportedly shut down emotionally. Insiders say she locked herself in a room, deleted every scheduled meeting, canceled a press appearance, and stopped replying to messages. Her inner circle said she was shaking after reading the files. She finally understood why the veterans were angry. She finally understood why fans were divided. She finally understood that NBC's obsession wasn't admiration. It was possession. She wasn't being elevated. She was being used. Used as a weapon. Used as leverage. Used as the centerpiece of a takeover that would pit her against the women she grew up admiring. And then, the moment that shifted everything, a veteran reached out to her privately. Not with anger, not with jealousy, not with blame, but with heartbreak. The message said, "We know you didn't do this, but you're the only one who can stop what they're doing to us." Caitlyn reportedly froze reading that line, because in one sentence, the pressure of an entire league fell on a 22-year-old rookie. NBC was telling her, "Stand with us." The veterans were telling her, "Stand with us." And both sides knew, whichever way she chose, she would break someone. Coaches were whispering that the locker room was on the verge of fracture. Agents were warning that endorsements could collapse. Networks were preparing statements. Sponsors were watching her every move. Teammates were wondering if she would speak up. Veterans were praying she wouldn't betray them. And NBC was panicking. But because Caitlyn had gone silent, completely silent. And silence from the most valuable athlete in women's sports is the most dangerous sound in the industry. Then late at night, hours after the third leak, Caitlyn did something that terrified everybody. She scrubbed multiple NBC-related posts from her feed. Instant chaos, instant speculation, instant meltdown. Fans screamed. She's distancing herself. She's done with NBC. She's about to pick a side. Reporters whispered, "If she turns on the network, it's over." This could collapse the entire partnership. Veterans will back her, but NBC will strike back. The league begged her not to speak yet. NBC begged her to stay quiet. Veterans begged her to stand with them. And then, right before midnight, Caitlyn posted one sentence on her Instagram story. "I won't let anybody use me to hurt this game." No emojis, no pictures, no tags, just a message. And a warning. Fans exploded. Veterans celebrated quietly. NBC executives were reportedly in full crisis mode. Because now the world knew, Caitlyn wasn't aligning with NBC. She wasn't aligning with Peacock. She wasn't aligning with the corporate plan. She was aligning with the truth. And if she chooses to expose everything, if she reveals the emails, the calls, the manipulation, she won't just shake the WNBA. She will end NBC's entire Phase 3 before it begins. But she hasn't spoken yet. She hasn't revealed the rest. She hasn't picked a side publicly. She's thinking, she's preparing, she's deciding. And when she finally speaks, it will decide the future of women's basketball forever. And now we're standing at the edge of the biggest crossroads the WNBA has ever faced. NBC is scrambling. Peacock is silent. Executives are panicking behind closed doors. Veterans are watching cautiously, wondering if the rookie they once supported will now become their greatest ally. And Caitlyn Clark, the center of this entire storm, has finally broken her silence with one sentence that shook the entire sports world. "I won't let anybody use me to hurt this game." That wasn't a caption. That wasn't a PR line. That wasn't a brand message. That was a warning. A warning to the networks. A warning to the execs. A warning to anyone who thinks they can puppeteer her career. But now the entire world is asking the same question. What happens next? Will Caitlyn expose everything NBC planned behind her back? Will she sit down with veterans privately or publicly? to unify the league? Will NBC try to retaliate? Will the WNBA step in before the locker room fractures completely? Will sponsors pressure both sides to resolve the crisis? Or will Caitlin drop a message, an interview, or a statement that changes the future of the league forever? Because make no mistake, the moment she speaks again, the internet will explode. So now it's your turn to speak. Jump into the comments right now. Do you think Caitlin should side with the veterans? Should she step forward and expose the leaked documents? Do you think NBC crossed the line by trying to reshape the league behind the players' backs? And most importantly, what do you think Phase 3 actually contains? Your theories fuel the next chapter of this story. If this episode had you shocked, pacing around your screen, gripping your chair thinking, "This is insane," then smash that like button so more people see what's unfolding in real time. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the second Caitlin posts anything, a sentence, a clip, a hint, we will break it down immediately. This saga is far from over. In fact, the biggest twist might be coming next.